Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to show you how I created a tumbler inspired by this set of nails. This was one of our looks for our Flynn Inspired challenge in my private membership group, and I just could not wait to make a tumbler from this inspiration layout. I'm going to have all the products that you see in this video listed and linked down below in the description box. You might even find some discount codes for you there as well. So that's enough chit chat for me. Let's go ahead and get started. You guys, so as usual, we're starting with a fully prepped and sanded cup, and I've already taped off my bottom. If you need some help with how or why I would tape off the bottom of my tumblers, I will list a tutorial down below that I think you'll find really helpful. We're going to base paint with a 3-color ombre today. I'm using Rustoleum's Coral for the bottom color. We'll be using Rustoleum Grape for the top color, and then Rustoleum's French Lilac for the center color. We want to get a dark purple to coral ombre base color going here. If you wanted to just forego that center color, you definitely could. I ended up having to do a couple coats just to get my blend and proportions right. Once I was happy with my paint, I let this dry for about 20 minutes or so until it was dry to the touch, and then we moved on to applying our glitter. Of course, I'm going to be using the epoxy method to apply our glitter today. Using epoxy as the adhesive for our glitter, I've mixed about 5 milliliters, and we're going to put a very, very thin and even coat on here. If you're having a hard time spreading your epoxy during this step, warm your cup up a little bit with your torch or your heat gun before you spread it on there. I'm going to be using Glitter Bestie from Maestra Creations for the bottom color today against that beautiful coral. And here I'm just applying a very, very light coat of glitter. So this is what I call the rough draft of our ombre, establishing the proportions and layout of our colors before we really let it rip and get the full coverage we're after. Next, I'm going in with Grapeful for our center color. This has the same kind of film or shift as Glitter Besties that we used for that coral color. So it's going to blend together seamlessly and help bridge the gap between the dark purple we'll be putting at the top and the coral that we put on the bottom. I'm using Vixen around the top rim. Notice that I am providing full coverage for the first inch of my top rim and then light coverage with a 45-degree angle, aiming for that top rim to really cascade that glitter down into the other colors very lightly. We don't want to let it rip yet because remember, we're still establishing the rough draft for our ombre. Once I'm happy with the layout of all of our colors on that first run, I'm going to start building up coverage with my second run through, starting with this center color first. I haven't really started to let it rip yet on this center color because I want to make sure I have my placement right for the top and bottom color first. I'm going in with a different color for the coral section to build up my coverage. This is a finer cut version of the first glitter we used for the coral section. I will have all these glitters listed and linked in the description box, but the reason I went in with a finer cut for the second time around is because it's going to help blend in a lot better because the first two colors are a little bit chunky, they're a little bit thick. And then of course, really letting it rip with this top color to establish a beautiful blend between those two purples. Once I've got all my glitter applied, I'm going to let this sit on my rack to dry for a couple hours. It does not need to go on your turner. Your dry time may vary based on the brand and type of epoxy that you're using. Be sure to remove your tape before you let it sit to dry so that epoxy doesn't dry onto your tape and cause some issues. Once this was dry, I aggressively tapped off the excess and I did spray seal it with a light coat of Rustoleum 2x clear gloss spray paint, and then I epoxied until smooth. In this case, it only took 2 coats to get to the point where we were ready to start with our sanding. Sorry I didn't film the epoxy part, but you guys have seen me do that a million times. If you're having trouble applying epoxy to your glitter, I will link a beginner's glitter tumbler tutorial in the description box that I think you'll find helpful. I'm doing my normal sanding routine today. As usual, we're going to sand down that top rim to expose a fine line of stainless steel. This is where our final coats of epoxy will adhere to create the seal for our tumbler on the outer rim rather than the very top rim where it's more vulnerable. Once I'm done with my sanding and knock down any pointy bits on the side, I'm going to clean this up with some rubbing alcohol and a paper towel, and now we're ready to move on to the next step. Next, we want to measure around our tumbler. This measurement is going to give us the width of our vinyl cutouts. We're going to be doing a 3-layer desert silhouette skyline design. So I need to know exactly how big around my cup is. It measured at 9.5 inches, but I gave myself a 1/4 inch seam allowance and cut this decal at 9.75 inches wide, which is approximately 9 3/4. I'm going to be applying these layers by hand. Because I'm using a curved tumbler, being able to apply this by hand without the transfer tape will allow me to stretch my tumbler if necessary, since we didn't warp the image. You don't really need to warp this image for this type of design because, again, we can just stretch it. It's really simple, so you don't really need your transfer tape. I'm also using Sizer's pressure sensitive vinyl, which performs really well in these types of applications. I will link the vinyl that I'm using down below. I also choose this vinyl because of the color selection. It's absolutely gorgeous, and it was the exact shades that I needed for this design. I'm going to be going around the cup very carefully, leaving that paper backing on to help me support the decal as I make my way around the tumbler. I love this file that I chose because it does match up pretty seamlessly on both ends for all 3 layers. I'm using my vinyl squeegee and my craft knife to pop any bubbles or to smooth out any wrinkles as I go. And you can see here at the end how nicely this file matches up end to end. Even with that curve, we were still able to get a really beautiful application on the skyline. Next, I'm going to apply the darker purple layer, being careful to position this so that the bottom of the first layer doesn't show any gap between the top of the second layer. And we're going to apply it just like we did the first one, trying to envision where these details would fall against that first layer before I decide on the placement of it. Again, because we are not using transfer tape, we have the freedom to kind of stretch and maneuver our vinyl to a point, and this pressure sensitive vinyl is performing beautifully. Now, I know what some of you are thinking, Jessica, you're gonna see the seams from the bottom layer through the top layer, and normally I would say you're right. However, it didn't turn out that way. I really, once I got epoxy on it, I couldn't really see a lot of those wrinkles and seams from the bottom layer through the top layers. So I just went on with it. I trusted the process. I absolutely loved how this turned out, and you couldn't really see the wrinkles and seams from the previous layers. So turned out really well. There were some parts on the dark purple layer where I wanted the lavender layer to kind of show through more. So I just used my craft knife to lightly cut out and edit those sections and remove them, and it turned out wonderful. Finally, we're going to apply the black layer of our design. I did use a small piece of transfer tape to transfer the more detailed cactus because that was a little bit tricky to try and do by hand. And again, you guys, we're going to apply this just like we did the last two, making sure that the top of the black layer doesn't have a gap between the bottom of the darker purple layer. So we want to try to, plan our route before we apply it. You will notice a gap between the bottom of the black layer and the bottom of our tumbler. That's okay. We're going to fill that in later. Now that I have all the vinyl applied, I'm going to tape off the stainless steel bottom again really quick because we're going to paint in this gap If you did not tape off your bottom, of course you can skip this step. To fill in the section of the exposed glitter down here, I'm just going to use a black acrylic paint marker. I'm going to hit it with my heat gun really quick to dry it, and then I'm going to apply a second layer just to make sure it's plenty dark. I'm then going to remove that masking tape that we applied earlier. Next, we're going to apply our moon and stars. This moon comes with the first skyline layer that we applied, this beautiful crescent moon, and these stars we're just going to apply all around the tumbler, kind of random. And then I'm going to use a fine tip white acrylic paint marker to just dot in some extra stars for some detail and whimsy. Now we're ready to apply our final coats of epoxy. I didn't seal my vinyl or that paint before we applied the final coats. My cup took 2 final coats before it was completely done, and that was it. I absolutely love how it turned out, and it was so much more simpler than I had envisioned in my head. I kind of want to make another one with some different colorways. Let me know what you guys thought about this one in the comments section, and if you liked my video, please be sure to give us a big thumbs up. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to my channel. We upload new videos every week. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again soon. And a big thank you to all of our Flynn Sisters exclusive members. Thank you for your pledge. Your support means the world to our channel. If you love this video, you could check out our last video here. Also be sure to find us on Instagram, Facebook, Pinterest, and of course subscribe for all our new videos that come out every Wednesday and Saturday. Thanks so much for watching. See you soon.